Hello and welcome to the Stress Mastery Podcast. Happy New Year to you guys. I am your host, Peggy Romero, and I thank you so much for joining me today. This week, we've been talking about resolution. But before I start with that, I want to let you guys know that we had a glitch on the podcast last week. So on getting my episode up and running, it didn't show up. So I did record the podcast on Desire on Christmas Eve. And it's not listed where you usually get your Stress Mastery podcast, but I do have it on my Peggy with Purpose Facebook page. And you can also find that one and any of my episodes on my website, which is PeggyRomero.com. So thank you guys for asking me for that, and thank you for listening. I was elated that several people reached out to me to ask about it or where it was or if they could hear it or why I hadn't done it. So thank you. I just realize that you guys listen to me and notice when I don't have one. So, wow, thank you. Oh my gosh, thanks. I thank you sincerely for tuning in. I thank you for supporting me in my ventures. I thank you for letting me know that I'm helping you on your journey. Like, that is such a blessing to me. I really appreciate every one of you. So this week we have been discussing resolution, which is perfect. Of course, Bill had it planned out that we would be finishing the week on New Year's Eve. So have you guys finished up your goals for 2023? I'm wondering if you started on them early or if you're waiting till the day. So I wonder too, like how many of us really have the courage to make resolutions. Sometimes we failed so many times before that you just don't even bother anymore. You know, I'm not so into New Year's resolutions for that very reason. I always think, well, if you're going to do it, then just stink and do it, right? Like Bill always says, you can't fail if you don't quit. Well, you also can't fail if you don't set the goal or your resolution in the first place, right? So how many of us play it safe and just don't make any resolutions at all? We're afraid of failing so bad that we just stay the same. So I'll tell you guys the truth. I made resolutions and failed at them so many times that I actually became a person who never made resolutions. I just didn't believe them anymore. I just knew, like, I'm full of it. I knew that I wasn't going to stick to it. It's too hard. I had no support, or I didn't have the money for the gym membership, or I couldn't afford to buy healthy food, or I didn't have time to set up the organization that I'd need to be able to maintain this new habit, or do I really want to have a new lifestyle? You know, looking back, the sad fact of it is I had no faith in myself. I didn't value myself enough. I didn't believe that I was a strong enough person. I didn't think I was smart enough or bold enough. I just flat didn't think I was worth it. I wasn't willing to spend money on myself. I wasn't worthy of whatever the cost was. I wasn't worthy of the time commitment. I just wasn't worthy. I also couldn't see the value in it. I mean, if you put yourself first, aren't you a selfish jerk? I never understood the selfish with the capital S. The selfish where, yeah, I need to put on my own oxygen mask before I can put the one on the child sitting next to me, right? I mean, how can a single mom buy a gym membership for herself? Isn't she selfish? She already works full time. Her kids need new shoes and she needs to be at home with them at night. How does she have time to go to the gym? You know, there's also like social pressure around resolutions because people just don't want us to change. So I've told you guys that about me and my friends and family before, but here's another true story. So my best friend Shelly and I, we decided that we wanted to work out. This was when we were younger. We were still in really great shape and we wanted to keep it up. So this was years ago and we still had little kids at home. She lived with her husband and 2 kids, and then I lived in my apartment with my 2 kids. And I lived next door to my parents. So Shelly and I find this inexpensive class at the YMCA. It was aerobics. Step aerobics. And it was I think that it was at 5 a.m. and got over at 6 a.m. So it was just perfect. Well, besides being so stinking early, but we could go to that class, get back in time to wake up the kids for school, get everyone ready, and get to where we all needed to be on time. So we did this for a while until one day early in the morning, I got home and I ran into my neighbor. I'll call him Monty. So Monty stands right next to me, next to my car. I had a green Camaro at the time, and he goes, "You disgust me. I can't believe you're staying out all night, leaving your kids home alone. What kind of mom does that? You've been out 3 or 4 nights this week. If I see your car is not here when I get up again, any other day, I'm calling the cops on you." Oh my gosh, you guys, I could have died. I was mortified. He thought I was a trashy hoe bag, a yucky mom. Besides being completely mortified, I was so pissed it wasn't even funny. But I also remember I was so embarrassed. I didn't even know what to say. And that morning, of course, I was busy. I was always in a big fat hurry when I got home. I had to wake up my kids, make breakfast, take a shower. Of course, I'm sure I hadn't had coffee yet. I had to do my hair and makeup. I was a hairdresser then. I had all kinds of stuff to do. I had to be ready when I got to work. And, all that kind of stuff that you have to do when you have young kids. It's not like they just hop up and take care of everything themselves. I probably had lunches to make and everything else. So I didn't have a conversation with him that morning. I probably didn't know what to say. I assume I said something like, "Oh, be quiet, Monty. I was doing aerobics," or, just something like that. I honestly don't remember what I said to him. But I do know that my mind was racing all day long about this. Like, what if he called the cops on me? What would the police have done if they went there? I guess my parents would have heard him knock on the door, but it really shook me up. But also it was like, how could he think that I'm out all night? I've been living here for a few years. He could have known me better than that. What an idiot thinking that I'd ever leave my kids alone, because I would never. My parents were right there and they knew where I was, what time, and, so did my kids. So yeah, they weren't in the same apartment but they were taken care of. So I tell my father what Monty had said, and my dad, of course, confronted him, standing up for my virtue and honor. Peggy is taking an exercise class at 5 a.m. because she has to work all day to support her kids alone. She wants to be home with them at night, so that's why she gets up before dawn to make the time for herself. She doesn't have the time or energy to go out all night, you idiot. I mean, I can just imagine it. Her mother and I are right here, and we are well aware of the kids, and the kids know that we're right here too. They're well taken care of, so you don't need to worry about calling the cops on her. But you know what I did? I quit going to that class shortly after that. Partly, yeah, because I was afraid he'd call the cops, but I don't know. I mean, now that I understand stress mastery and how we all deal with conflict and resistance, I wonder why I really quit. I mean, we know change is hard, so I'm sure I was going through a resistance, and I also had low self-esteem, I just told you. So I know I was afraid that there were other people who might be thinking that I was trashy. And, I didn't know who could see me coming home at 6 a.m. and who thought that I'd been out all night. Like my mom always said, what will the neighbors think? One of approval, right? So there were lots of other people living in this, it was a great big complex. And I had lots of friends there, but, hundreds of people I didn't know. And who knows who else was looking and wondering what I was up to. So you see, I had got a divorce like a year before, and I was really transitioning my life. Like I had just become a small business owner and I was trying to make a new life and a new reputation for myself. I didn't need people talking bad about me. One of approval. Also, we know well that aerobics can be hard work. Step aerobics for an hour. I don't care if you're 30 something. Maybe, I use that accusation as an excuse to quit. I don't know. It might have been physical resistance. I used to pick Shelly up and drop her off. So maybe Shelly, was tough on her. Maybe she wanted to quit and I didn't want to go alone. Maybe I used that for an excuse. So another caveat to the story is that Monty, the neighbor, had a crush on me prior to this. So he'd asked me out several times over the past few years, and it was always a flat no. I mean, I was not interested in this guy at all. Was I really afraid he'd call the cops? I do think so. I mean, I was always afraid. I never wanted my kids to get taken from me. So maybe for him, this crush on me had turned to disdain, right? I mean, after all, I disgusted him. So maybe it made it easier for him to see me in a negative light, which of course pissed off my ego. I mean, there was other stuff going on. It wasn't that easy to change my routine. There was a lot I had to keep up with, so I failed. So you can't change your life by sitting on the sidelines wishing for things to change. You can't sit on the sidelines wishing for things to be different. Nothing changes unless you change. I didn't make the change. So stress mastery is the connection between peace and conflict. Bill was saying something like this the other day. So conflict resolution professional. We must understand how the human being behaves. Since we're all human beings, we all behave exactly the same. We have no choice. Our lives are full of other human beings acting like that too. So we're all in full reaction mode all the time. Remember, event, judgment, reaction, red zone, all day, every day. And we'll stay this way every day because we avoid conflict. We don't want to go through it and resolve it. We're always avoiding conflict and seeking pleasure. It feels great at the moment. It's easier to turn our back and walk away. But in the long run, we're a disaster emotionally. Empty, sad, distressed, mad, you name it, all those red zone energies. So I ask you, do you want to become a conflict resolution professional? Because I do. I'd love to live in the moment every day. Like right now, all day, every day, in the now. Event, awareness, response. I mean, awareness as my superpower 24/7, what could be better? To live in a place of a response, conflict resolution all the time. Remember, we're always going to have stress. This is for sure. It's always going to be part of life. But your peace depends on how you deal with it. Reacting from the red zone or in response from the green zone. The choice is ours, right? Are you willing to face the truth about yourself? I mean, I can ask myself, was it really Monty's fault that I quit going to my exercise class? I mean, do you see how funny that is? It's absolutely ridiculous. Of course it wasn't Monty's fault. Monty was my scapegoat. So I just quit. I found a reason and quit. Are you sick of having the same goals year after year? The other day, Bill said on the podcast, the ego is the driver of conflict. Gosh, that's so true. And you are the processor of resolution. Wow. So naturally, if we stay connected to our heart, life will be better. I mean, that's where you live. The ego's in the head, you're in the heart, the real you. It seems so stinking simple when you say it like that, doesn't it? I don't know. I wish it were easier, but that's the way it is. The heart. Yes, I know my true self, the Holy Spirit. It lives in there. I feel lovely and connected to my heart, to God, my purpose, myself. That's me. That is who I really am. It's just all right here. Then we know the ego, that inner critic, the never-ending blatherer. You should have done this. Why did you do that? Why couldn't you have done that better? Or he'd better not do that again. Or if she says that again, why I oughta, whatever. The voice that never stops. That is my ego, Lucy. It's actually not me. So I guess it's Lucy's fault that I quit exercising. How can that possibly be? So now I know the truth. So why would I ever be listening to her? Why do I forget to stay connected to my true self? Maybe instead of looking for excuses, I could practice awareness more. I could decide to live connected to the heart all day long. You know, I think that might be the answer for all of us. I think that's what Bill's been trying to tell us for all these years. This is how we can, too, become a conflict resolution professional. If we look at the truth about ourselves, we have to admit that our lives are exactly what we project them to be. With every single thought, we are mapping our future. It's amazing. If we continue to live in the programs of the past, then we're going to relive the same life, the same conflict over and over and over and over. We'll make the same goals and resolutions year after year because we still hadn't met them the year before because we were too busy living our old life in the same programming. So you guys were all the same until we decided to change. It isn't Monty's fault. It isn't my parents' fault. It isn't even my fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just the programming. Remember, we're hardwired for behavior, and our behavior is dictated by what is held in mind. I was holding in mind my mother's warning. What will the neighbors think? I was raised to care about what the neighbors thought. I was raised to care about what everybody else thought about me. It's my programming, the want of approval, the want to belong. It was a program. It still is a program for me. I still struggle with it now. Not nearly as much, of course. You guys, I didn't give two hoots about Monty. I didn't care what he thought. I was barely even friends with him. But him thinking that I was some trashy woman leaving my kids alone and going out all night rattled the crap out of me. Remember, I was raised to care what the neighbors thought, and he thought I was a bad mom. He thought I was a party girl. He said, "You disgust me." Well, I haven't thought about that rather insignificant incident in ages. But now, I think it was probably easier for him to face my rejection his programming. I mean, after all, I was not the nice girl that he thought I was. So I'll bet in his mind, this judgment of me was a really good excuse for him to be able to dismiss me, to disrespect me, to decide against me. Like, well, she isn't who I thought she was. I sure dodged a bullet when that girl said no. You see all the programs we carry? This is why awareness is so important. So here I am, all these years later, I'm still speculating. I'm using my programming and I'm trying to figure out rationally what his programs were telling him about me like 30 years ago. I mean, what the heck? It's all so crazy. You guys, I was upset by that judgment I was so upset by that judgment that I can still remember today that I was upset. So how this guy made me feel when he confronted me that morning is still in my mind. I mean, don't worry, Bill, I'm not activated, so you haven't wasted all your time on me. But I was distraught at the time. And if I hadn't learned stress mastery, I'm telling you, this would still be upsetting me right now. Right now, I could tell you guys the story and laughed. I've let it go. I don't give two hoots. I don't nearly have the programming that I have for belonging and approval. Although, like I said, it still is a little, something, but not like it was. And we all carry around this kind of grief, pain, rejection, the hurts and the losses, or we don't. We let them go. But we have to decide to do that. We can only release the programs that no longer serve us if we decide to. But each one of us gets to decide who we are today. It doesn't matter who you were yesterday. It doesn't even matter what you did this morning or a minute ago. Only thing that really matters is what are you going to do tomorrow, next week, and next year? Better yet, what are you going to do right now? So let's not let another year go by without working on being the best version of ourselves. Take an inventory. Get rid of the things that hurt you. Stop reliving them. You get to choose what you think about. When things pop in your head, you get to decide if it's worth your energy. You don't have to think about it. It's your choice. If it doesn't serve your life, get rid of it. Think about it. In that inventory, what are you carrying around that you could actually let go of? And then let it go. Journal it out, let it go. Replace those daunting old programs with happy new ones. It doesn't matter if you've never gone for a walk in your life. Put on your shoes and walk out the door. One step quickly becomes one block. One block will be a mile before you're done listening to one of Bill's podcasts. One more thing I want to mention in closing. Remember to count your wins. What have you done right? Because you've got plenty. List them out if you need to. Get yourself moving. Get yourself motivated. And don't ever forget that it's the ego that's going to try and remind you of all the bad stuff. He's going to remind you of, all the self-talk like grief and despair and the things that you can't do and the things that you failed at before. I encourage you to connect to your purpose, connect to your heart, your creation mind, because that's where you'll find hope. That's where your spirit is. That's where the light shines. That is where your spark comes from. So whether you make goals or resolutions for yourself, I know you have dreams because we all do. And I'm sure that you have things that you could have better in your life. And I pray that 2023 will be everything that you imagine it to be. So let's all imagine great and wonderful things for ourselves and our families. Happy New Year's, everyone. And that's it for today's podcast. Our mission here is to create a shift in the planet, and you can join us on that mission by simply like, share, and subscribe. The links are right below the show notes. As always, until next time, stay inspired, and God bless you in 2023.